Welcome to Chapter 7, Lesson 3. Today we're going to learn how to define and use zero and negative exponents. The first thing that we're going to start off with is knowing that anytime you have something raised to the power of zero, no matter what it is, it's always going to result in an answer of 1. So a to the 0 is 1. 4 to the 0 is 1, and negative 6 to the 0 is 1. Now, notice this one, we have a power to a power. Well, if you follow the power to a power rules, you would multiply your exponents together, and your base would stay the same, but 4 times 0 is 0, and therefore 2 to the 0 power is also 1. So no matter what, anytime you have an exponent of 0, your answer is going to be 1. The second rule that we want to talk about is when you have a negative exponent. The biggest thing that you have to realize is anytime you have a negative exponent in your expression, it's got to be simplified. You cannot have a negative exponent. So if you do have a negative exponent, what you're going to do is you're going to reciprocate it into the form. So if I have a to the negative nth power, I'm going to reciprocate that and turn it into 1 over a to the nth power. So basically, I'm moving that to the denominator of a fraction. So on the second one, 2 to the negative first power, I reciprocate that and I call that 1 over 2 to the first power, which then results in the answer of 1/2. Now notice this next example is a power to a power, and we know that from a power to a power we multiply. So we multiply those two together, we keep the base of 3, but negative 2 times negative 4 now is positive 8. So we have gotten rid of our negative exponents just by following the power of a power rule. Now you could go ahead and simplify 3 to the 8th power and put that answer in as well. So if I type in 3 to the 8th power, I get 6,561. Okay, what's the purpose of exponents? The purpose is to condense a very large number into a smaller number. So we can just leave this one as 3 to the 8th power. All right, negative 8 is being raised to the negative 3rd power. So because my base is negative 8 and because I have a negative exponent, I'm going to move my base to the bottom. Notice that because the base is negative, I keep that inside parentheses, and now that I've moved it to the bottom, by reciprocating, that 3 is now a positive 3 rather than a negative 3. There's nothing left on the top, so I put a 1 in its place. What's the purpose of having that negative there? Well, if I have negative 8 like this to the 2nd power, this means negative 8 times negative 8. But if I don't have that in, what that would mean is negative 8 to the 2nd power. So what this means is I'm squaring my 8, which is 8 times 8, and then I attach the negative out in front, which is a completely different answer. So if you have a base of a negative, keep that inside of the parentheses so you continue with the same problem. Now, if my negative is on the bottom, I still reciprocate. Reciprocate just means if it's on the bottom, move to the top. If it's on the top, move to the bottom. So because my negative is on the bottom and I reciprocate that, that means my base of 2 moves to the top and that 3 becomes positive, and then I would reciprocate putting that 1 on the bottom. Now, we all know that you don't ever need a 1 on the bottom if it's by itself, so my answer is just 2 to the 3rd power. Now, what if it's the other way, just like I was talking about? If your negative's on the bottom, you're going to move it to the top. If your negative's on the top, you're going to move it to the bottom. Now, this only is with exponents. We never, ever want to have a negative exponent. So if I have a to the nth power here, the reciprocal of that is 1 over a to the negative nth power. Just like with a number, if I have the number 2, the reciprocal of that would be 1 over 2 to the negative 1st power. Now, on this one, I have 1 over 2 to the negative 3rd power. I reciprocate that, and it becomes 2 to the 3rd power, and then 2 to the third power is equal to 8. So basically what we're saying here is anytime you have an exponent that's negative, the base and that negative exponent needs to be reciprocated so that that exponent becomes positive. So let's go ahead and do a few practices with everything combined. So this first one, we have a base of negative 3. We have a base of negative 3. These are being multiplied together. So multiplication of these two, well, if I do 5 and negative 5, because my base is the same, this is where I add those two together, and then my base is negative 3 to the 0 power, which anything to the power of 0 is 1. On this next one, notice that we have a base of 6 on both the top and the bottom, and we have division. So because we have division, we can subtract. What's negative 2 minus 2? My base is still 6, but negative 2 minus 2 is negative 4. So now I have 6 to the negative 4th. I can't have a negative exponent, so I reciprocate that and I move that 6 to the 4th to the bottom. There was nothing on top, so I have to fill it in with a 1. My next example here, we have a 3 outside of the parentheses, which has to be distributed to everything inside the parentheses. So the 2 becomes 2 to the third, the x becomes x to the third, and the y becomes y to the negative 15th because it's a power to a power, so we multiply. Now, the 2 to the third looks fine, my exponent's positive. The x to the third looks fine, my x is positive, but this cannot have a negative exponent, so I have to reciprocate it and move it to the bottom. The only thing that I move to the bottom is what I circled here with the negative. The 2 to the third is just fine, so leave that on the top. The x to the third is just fine, so leave that on the top. The only thing we move to the bottom is the y, and then the 15 becomes positive. So this is my final answer. All right, this next example, we have 2 to the negative second power. So this is equal to 2 to the negative second power. The x is x to the negative second power. And the 5, or the y, is still y to the 5th power. On the bottom, I have negative 4, I have x squared, and I have y squared. So now I'm applying some of my division rules here, which result in subtraction. So when I see this, first of all, I can't have a negative exponent, so that has to get moved to the bottom. So I'm going to make my 2 to the second power. My negative 4 stays as negative 4. I need to subtract here, so negative 2 minus 2 is x to the negative 4th, and my y to the 5th and y to the squared becomes y to the 3rd by subtracting. Now everything looks pretty good so far. 2 squared is 4, and 4 times negative 4 is negative 16. And on the top, I have x to the negative 4th, so I have to move that to the bottom to reciprocate, and then I leave y to the 3rd as it is. So my final answer is y to the 3rd over negative 16 x to the 4th. So what you have to remember here is you can't have a negative exponent, and if you do, you've got to reciprocate it. Now you might be thinking, well, why didn't I move this negative 16? The base can be negative. The only thing that can't be negative is the exponent. And now, in this answer, all of my exponents are positive, so I'm good. What I want you to do tonight for homework is come see me and I will get you the 7-3 worksheet. Please make sure that you finish that worksheet and check it before going on to your homework on page 452. Once you have that finished, then you can check that online as well. But this is going to be a 2-day lesson. So day 1, I want you to work on the worksheet, and day 2, you will be working on page 452. Again, please see me if you have questions. Otherwise, good luck, and We will see you shortly.